What's up? Welcome to the channel, and I got a special guest, probably someone you never thought would be on this channel at all. We have Mr. Vegan Gains. So how this happened was I saw you posted a couple times on my said some things about me, posted some, not posted, but like, commented and stuff, and I'm like, yo, let me just chat with the dude and see what he's all about. And I don't think I think for the most part, people know who you are, like not in terms of like your popularity, but just they know you, but they don't know you. I don't know if that's like I'm gonna find out if this is who you are. I know your demeanor is very normal and natural and whatnot, but diving in to see who you actually are. I don't want to ask the hard questions, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but I know you probably will because you got that thing about you don't really care what people think about you. Am I correct?
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much.
Answer honestly.
Cool. Yeah. All right. So first things first, appreciate you coming. I want to know why. Why did you agree to this?
Why not?
Good answer.
I've actually reached out to meet up with you before because I saw you were in the Toronto area, and I was reacting to a bunch of your videos where you're going over like bench press form, overhead press, and I disagreed with some of your like technique cues and stuff, and I offered to actually meet up and help you out with some of the stuff. Yeah, you probably missed it. I only left a comment, so.
Okay. Let's talk about that. What how long ago was that? Was that like recent or?
Probably about a year ago.
Year ago? Well, let's chat. Let's might as well touch that. What about let's talk overhead press. What about it did you not or did you disagree with? And it's completely fine to disagree with anything.
Yeah, so it just seemed like you just weren't familiar with the lift. I could tell it's just not a lift that you would normally do in your routine, and you just seem to kind of misunderstand some of the mechanics of the lift. You're telling people not to lean backwards when doing the overhead press. You kind of have to maintain the bar, like where the bar position is over your midfoot. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is why I like this conversation. This is why I at the same time hate social media and like at the same time, because we come with this. So when I think lean back, I think people they think they're moving their entire body. When I say lean, like your body posture has to be this way. Like if I don't even know you can see from the side, but for me to have a direct bar pathway, I have to be like this. But then most people do this and they forget everything else with your core, and then they're just kind of bellied out, and they're just arching their back, and they're just kind of hucking up weight. So I completely agree with you for sure on that standpoint in terms of like leaning back. Maybe that's the wrong way I should have said it, but what you're saying is, I'm assuming what you mean is having a little bit of, I would say that like extension in your C-spine and be able to almost like posture up in a sense, kind of like Mike Wick kind of says, your chest is kind of doing this and you do have to be in a way this way, lean back. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, there's two issues. One issue is your head is in the way when you do an overhead press.
Yeah.
So you do have to lean back to get your head out of the way. And also when you're just using a substantive amount of weight, in order to keep the bar over your midfoot, you usually do just have to lean back anyway, even if you didn't have a head. So
for me, I used to coach a CrossFit class. It was like somewhat like a CrossFit class. And when it came to coaching that, what I coach in terms of like bar pathway is, basically being in I would say from floor to core is like being in like almost like if you're at the top of a squat, like you still be active from the ground to your hips, and you have a little slight, I would say like hinge in your hips, and then you're active in your core and through your torso, and then you're more so like looking up and leaning back. Not leaning back, but like you're arching your back, but not necessarily like leaning back. But I totally understand what you're saying. But you're also like, you're talking about like just like heavier like overhead pressing, or like say doing an overhead, snatch, or just like say like a top of a push press, or like if you did a clean and press, or just strictly if we're doing like overhead pressing from seated or standing. I just want to get on see what you're saying with that.
Well, I was talking about standing overhead press.
And then standing overhead press from like just off the rack, or we're talking like off of the like from like a clean, or just strictly off the rack, front rack position, and then pressing.
Yeah, just from a front rack position.
So we're kind of saying the same thing, and I'm maybe might have explained it wrong in a sense. Then maybe
Yeah,
it's
well, anyway,
misunderstood.
I just reached out to, like, I didn't even expect a collab. I just figured it'd be cool to meet up and just go over training.
Collabing would have been dope. I would have next time I'm down. So funny thing is, I'm always not always in, but I'm usually in Guelph every time I head to Ontario because I work with Blue Star, so I'm in that area anyway.
Yeah,
And they got
so
a pretty dope. They got a pretty dope gym too, right? So you're how close are you there?
like 5 minutes away, probably.
And then the other was the bench press. Was it bench press?
Yeah, I disagreed with some of the things you said on the bench. You said that you should avoid having a very radical arch on the bench. I thought, given your audience, that's probably bad advice because most men don't have the sort of flexibility of a like ballerina or a gymnast. So usually when people try to have as radical an arch as possible, they're barely arching. Being able to develop an arch on a bench is pretty difficult, especially if you're an average man. Your average man isn't super flexible. So really, for most people, I'd say they should try to arch as much as they can because as much as they can means barely having an arch.
So that's kind of tricky to almost like to say. So like for me, like so we're similar. We're saying the same type of things. For me, it's like if someone's gonna be on the bench, I'm always making cues more so based on people would, I would say, overemphasize an arch and then they don't engage their core. You can completely engage your core and still have a healthy arch in your back, just by like you correct me if I'm wrong or disagree or not, but just by me just doing this alone is going to make a natural arch in my back. The problem I see is people overdoing the arch from the floor more than anything else. So they're kind of like taking the powerlifting technique and overlaying it to like a everyday person just trying to have a nice chest, technique. So for me, it's like understanding both and then not, and understanding when to do what and when not to do it. So if you're a regular person who's just trying to like get a nice chest and work out on a bench or whatever it is, there's not a need to have this excessive arch, but you're gonna have a natural arch, but you should always engage your core in that arch. So I get that. I think we would have said the same thing in person and probably did the exact same technique.
Yeah, I disagree. If you just lay flat on the bench and you deliberately puff your chest out, you're not going to have an arch on the bench. An arch is something different than just deliberately trying to puff your chest out. An arch does limit range of motion, but it actually changes the angle of the lift where you're using a bit more of the mass of your pectoral muscles.
For sure.
And it also gives you a bit of a more stable platform to bench off of. You have a really good strong contact with your traps, and it just makes it a bit easier to have a strong press.
Coach me from floor all the way up, and I'll kind of like chime in and be like, I'll be like, yeah, yes or no, and it's completely fine.
So it's kind of hard to explain bench setup without actually showing, but what I do is I like to actually grip the bar sort of like a chin up. I pull myself up and actually try to press my traps into the bench. So then with my legs, I sort of push myself, I push towards my head so that I can actually develop a real arch, and then I plant my butt down. And then I like to have my feet flat on the floor. I don't like to have my only my toes in contact, and I also like to grip the bench with my legs, sort of like on a motorcycle, where you like grip with your thighs on the sides of the bike. I like to grip my thighs onto the bench as well.
So it's like you have a technique preference, because for me, so I'm assuming you're tall. You gotta be like 5'10". 6. Okay, yeah, you're tall as hell, right? So your feet touch the ground every single time. So I can see what you're saying by that. So for me, it's gonna be like if you're gonna set yourself up, right? I'm gonna grab the bar wherever I'm at, and I'm gonna set myself down first, and then grab my bar, adjust my feet so my feet are basically like kind of under my heels, my heels are almost like under my knees at least. And then when I have the bar, I'll readjust myself so I can get myself flat there, and then I have a good base. If my feet are too short, then I'll put a plate there so I can get my entire foot on the ground because I find way better connection from there. And then when I'm there, we have like that, almost like that pushing feeling, like extension feeling from the quads pushing into the ground, right? Because that's going to force that it would force a lot more stress pushing into your glutes. And instead of like pushing into your squeezing your legs, I'm also almost like squeezing like almost doing a hip thrust, but my heels are backing up and I'm squeezing my glutes that they don't come off the bench. And that's kind of like what regulates my hips from coming off. And then from there, I do have an arch. My arch isn't as exaggerated, I would say. I wouldn't say even exaggerated, but like you're tall. You have how like you're 6 something. So you're how you bench, and I get what you're saying. How you bench is going to be very different from a lot of people who are not 6 foot. You said 4?
6'3".
6'3", whatever. 6'3", 6'4 is same thing for me at this height. So for me, so at 6'4", your bench is going to be a lot different. Would you say your body composition in terms of like your tibia, your femur, and your torso are very much evenly balanced? I would say like you don't have a shorter torso than your legs, or do you have a normal size torso for your...
Yeah, I don't think I have abnormal sort of body proportions for my height, but usually taller people have a shorter torso compared to their legs. So yeah. If you see me squat, I do have to lean over more than a shorter person.
Of course. So I just think that in that standpoint, I think even from having a shorter torso, you're going to have a lot more. That makes a lot more sense for me and for you to bench that way. And I think like back contact for me, it's not necessarily just chest more so than it is more, I would say like your mid or say high T spine more so than you're coming closer to your C spine, right? So you're talking about like trap wise. I'm thinking traps like mid trap contact and your scaps basically retracted or flat on the bench. So for me, I guess like my contact points would be like 2 feet on the ground, butt on the bench, arching your back, core engaged, and then your scaps or your shoulder blades flush on the bench so they're flat, so you can't basically roll back and forth, and then you're basically into your positioning, and then that does give you that natural arc or straight push the way you do. That makes sense? Or
I don't think that actually gives you a natural arch. Again, if I've seen your bench press setup and you demonstrated how you set up, your back is pretty flat. I think like most of your back is getting contact with the bench. So arch is something that you have to actually deliberately set up. It's not something that will just happen from you retracting your scapula and just deliberately puffing your chest up.
It's not puffing your chest, more so just like lifting and actually lifting your chest up. You can't just puff your chest up. When I mean puff your chest up or posture up, it'll be the same as like almost depressing your shoulders. If you do it yourself, you just go like this and try and touch your hand with your chest, you're naturally going to create an arch just from your C-spine. And then your rest of your arch will come from where you put your feet and then compressing this way and then arching. That's why when you do the way you do it, when you pull yourself in, when you set yourself up, you actually push yourself together so you do create an arch. So I get what you're saying, but I definitely wouldn't mind doing it in person, and that would be like way easier. So next time we do that'd be pretty dope.
I mean, it'd be pretty cool if you could come over to Guelph or Toronto area, and then we can have a meetup and go over our preferred bench press technique.
And I think that's really, there's always going to be a preferred, and like, you know, let's put it this way: if we are, let's say we're on two ends of the spectrum. We're not like just for me and you. You're on one end of the spectrum, and I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I feel like we're not that far in the spectrum away from each other, but then everyone's going to kind of go in between based on what body type, or I would say their preference in terms of how they're pressing, so to speak. I think either way, but agree. Definitely gonna do it the next time. What else? What other technique things do you not agree with?
Yeah, I think that was basically it. It's mostly pressing movements that I have some disagreements with you on.
How big is your wingspan?
About the same as my height, about 6'3".
Yeah, my wingspan's longer than my height. Like I got the ones like a normally like long. I should have been taller, or just I don't know. We can make some funny jokes, but either way, I got a normally long wingspan for me. So it kind of changed a lot of things in my pressing as well too. I'm just gonna put it out there. What's your background, bro?
Like what? My ethnicity? Like
yes.
That sort of thing?
That's only Canadians can say that.
My dad's from Antigua, which is an island in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
My mom is from Canada, but her mom is from, what's it called? Estonia.
Okay.
Yeah. and she actually just recently got a genetic test done. Most of her lineage is from Sweden.
So that's so your mom and dad are both tall.
Yeah, my mom's 5'8", my dad's 6'4".
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, my mom's 5'7", my dad was 5'10", and somehow I ended up 5'8". I would say I'm 5'8", 5'7" a little bit. So, how long have you been your wife and married?
I think it's been 6 years.
Nice. And you guys met
We met online.
online, Tinder?
Yeah, Facebook.
I would say Tinder. I'm assuming she's practiced veganism as well.
Yeah.
I will assume it could not work if
Yeah, it would not.
that's a deal breaker.